Welcome to the Rising from the Ashes podcast. I'm your host, Amy Grace, obsessed with coffee, cowboy boots, and deep relationships. I'm on a mission to help you find the gold in your story through faith, family, and wellness, because I believe your story can break you wide open to live a beautiful, abundant, and vibrant life. I'll share with you how the hard seasons and difficult circumstances can become a catalyst of growth that often lead into some of the most beautiful stories we've ever told. I'm so grateful you're here. Grab a cup of coffee and let's talk. I have with me today Hannah Rita, photographer, business owner, podcast host, founder, and CEO of the Elevated Elopement Experience. Hannah has been capturing timeless moments since 2016 and is passionately dedicated to her mission of telling your story. Hannah has been featured on The Knot, Georgia Bridal Show, Wedding Wire, and Expertise.com, just to name a few. Welcome to the show, Hannah. I'm super grateful to have you here today. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like it's been not so long ago, but forever ago that we actually saw each other, but we're coming up on 6 months.
Has it been 6 months already?
We're like at 5.5, I think.
What?
It's
That does
wild.
not be possible. That was the most beautiful day ever.
Thank you. Thank you. But since then, you've launched a brand new, beautiful website. You've also had the most perfect little baby. How are you?
Oh, I'm good. I'm good. Honestly, it's just been a whirlwind, and I feel like, just one thing after another, right? And kind of rolling with the punches. Life hands you something, and you don't quite anticipate all of the twists and turns, but especially as an entrepreneur and as a mama and all of the things. So it's just been really a learning experience. I feel like God's really like pruning my heart a bit.
That is incredible. I feel like you do all the things. I love to watch you juggle it all. You do it so well.
Oh, and there is a art to the juggle, but I do feel like this year is my year of focus and intentionality. And I think that there's going to be some amazing fruit that comes from that, because I think that there's this glamorous, shiny object syndrome that we all get, especially entrepreneurs, and it can be very distracting, and it kind of can keep you from like fulfilling your purpose,
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's something that I've struggled with quite a bit. And I know that this podcast episode has nothing to do with this, but because we're talking about elopements, but seriously, I've always just been kind of a person that feels like I have so much to give. And so I've been, in so many different careers even,
you have.
This year, I really want to focus on my photography business, and I just want to pour my heart and soul into it in a way that I haven't before, which is crazy, being that this is my 8th year going into it. And now I'm like, I have this like reignited fire for it. It's crazy. But I also have been doing the coaching thing too, with coaching other people into photography. And that has been extremely rewarding. And I'm basically just going to take them along for the ride.
That is so cool. I love that word, intentionality. I feel like that was my word last year or the year before. But it's a word that I've hung on to. It's like, I don't want to let that word go. And so I feel like I'm just weaving it into, the next season of like, I just want to make sure that I'm intentional in what I'm choosing and just where my energy is going, where my focus is going.
Exactly.
I love that word. Love it.
Yes, it's a great word. I think that it should be like etched on my soul forever.
Yes.
Yeah. This is the first year that I've been like, wow, like God, you really put that on my heart, because I wanted my word of the year to be forward. That's what my word was, like forward, like let's get this thing moving. And God's like, oh, no. It's intentional. Like you're going to slow your roll. Yeah, you're going to slow your roll and you're going to be intentional about your time and your energy. And I mean, all the things with the time, especially as a mama, like you have to
Yes.
be very
Yes.
intentional with getting that time, not only for your kids, but for you.
Yes. I feel like once you're a
Mhm.
mom, everything shifts and it becomes so much more important because there's so many
So
things
much
to
more.
juggle and there's no real balance. It's just what is getting your
Yeah,
focused attention at that moment.
right. Exactly.
Yes.
And without the proper planning, you can get totally thrown to the wayside, especially you and your partner's relationship, like me and my
Yes.
husband. You have to be so intentional about that too. It's
Yes.
huge.
So
Mm,
important. Love it. Love it. Love it.
so good.
Okay. I'm going to jump right in because I have so much that I want to discover with you today. But
Let's do it.
I first just have to touch on our crazy story of how our lives have continued to cross over like,
I know.
what is it, a decade now? I just think it
Literally.
has been so cool to like watch it unfold right in front of us. And it's one of those stories that like I never saw coming. I never knew in microbiology we would be here a decade later doing a podcast
That
episode
was like
together.
14 years ago, Amy. That was so long ago.
We
It
were
was like over
kids.
a decade ago.
Yes. So I would love
Right.
to hear your version of just kind of the ways that our lives have continued just to kind of cross back and forth over the past, like, what, 14 years? Give me your
Yeah, like I
version.
mean, I was 19 and Amy Grace Patterson, honey. I remember I loved saying your name. You were the sweetest soul that you've ever seen. I was like, this girl is precious. Like instantly when I met you. And you were on like in one of my groups or something. We did like a group project or something
I think
together. I don't
so.
remember. But yeah, we did.
So fuzzy back
And
then.
I was yeah. And then, we kind of stayed, I guess, kind of sort of connected through the hospital because you got hired and then somehow we got connected and again and you asked me to shoot your family like for
Hmm.
photography and it was just, that continued relationship that we maintained and then I started, reading your blogs too, and I loved how vulnerable you are, and just how you share your heart. It's something really refreshing, and I feel like a lot of people shy away from it. I mean, people are scared to even put their face on stories on Instagram. You know what I mean? Much less write. Yeah, like much less
It's me.
write and pour their soul out, but you do that so effortlessly. So I think it's just I've always been so drawn to you. And can I talk about the photography session that I had no idea what was happening or
Yes,
no?
please do. I would love to hear your version of that because I can tell it from my perspective, but I would love to hear it from yours. And this will be the first time that we've ever elaborated on this.
We've never talked about it.
Let's
That we've
go there.
never I didn't even know if it would be a thing, if we could go there, but okay. So during the session, it was just a family session. It was just you three, right?
Hmm.
It was just, yeah, it was okay. And your oldest, Jackson?
Yep.
Okay. So it was Jackson, you, and your husband,
Uh-huh.
and who I thought y'all were doing fine, right?
Hmm.
Like I thought everything was good. So I was putting you through all the poses of a loving, happy family. And I, at the end, you took me aside and you told me what was going on. You're like, hey, we're going through a rough time right now. Some things are happening. We're separating. And you basically just told me that it was kind of over for you guys. And you were just working through the emotions of it, like right in front of my face. Like, and I could see it in your eyes. It was fresh,
Hmm.
super fresh but you wanted those photos for Jackson to look back on and see all three of you together.
Hmm.
And like, oh my gosh, it makes me emotional to think about it. But girl, I got in my car. I called my husband. I said, "You will not believe what just happened. I just put this girl in the most awkward position ever. I felt so bad. I felt so bad." And he was like, "Well, you didn't know." And I was like, "But still, like, that's crazy, but you were just rolling with it. I mean, kissing and kisses on the cheeks and laying down. I was just like totally, I felt so bad. Okay. So bad. Anyways, though,
I asked for it.
You did. Okay. You did ask for it. However, I still felt my heart just broke for you in general because of where you were, you know, and I, and knowing how your story, where it was in that moment and where God pulled you to, it
Mm-hmm.
was just like the testimony of all time. And when you messaged me or texted me, I don't remember what it was, and you asked me to shoot your vow renewal, I was just so excited because I mean, what a comeback. What an amazing God story, right? Because
Yes, yes. Only
us,
God.
we would never, it just in a million years, in that moment, you would have never thought that you would be wanting to do a vow renewal, 7 years in. You'd be like, there's no way. There's
Exactly.
absolutely no way.
Yeah.
But God was like, no, I'm gonna redeem this in the best possible way. And to see where you guys are now and to hear your hearts and to witness it firsthand, I mean, it was it was honestly one of the most beautiful moments. I had to like pinch myself a little bit because I just knew that this is, where you were and where you are now today. It's
Mm-hmm.
just beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
Only God. Man, I will still cry when I look back at those pictures because I mean, it's like you said, I did those for Jackson. I wanted Jackson to at least have
Yes.
one family picture of all of us, but it really did feel like the
Mhm.
end, and everything felt so out of control. And just to look back at those pictures, I will treasure those for forever. It is just something where I look back and I can see like only God could do that. And
Yeah, totally. I mean,
man,
when you were telling me about it, your voice was shaking like at that session, at that photo session with Jackson. I mean, I was like, wow,
yeah.
wow. Just totally. Because number one, Amy Grace Patterson, you, you were the sweetest soul in the history of the world. Nothing bad happens to Amy Grace. Okay. That's what I'm saying. But you're just a precious, precious like soul, honestly. And I'm just so thankful that you guys mended and have created something really beautiful from it. Like, and the way you two talk about your love, it's so powerful, you know? I mean, it's so rooted in Jesus and forgiveness and love and grace and mercy. Like, that's what it's all about.
That is what it's all
That's what it's
about.
all about.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Ooh, that's
Man,
so good.
down memory lane.
I know. I know. Oh,
Wow.
so good.
All right. So, change of gears here. I
Yes, let's do it.
ultimately want you to take us behind the scenes of an elopement photographer. I want you to dive into your photography story just a little bit first. So, you alluded to you've had
Yeah.
several different careers. Tell us when you first
Ugh.
started doing photography full time.
So full time actually was in 2020.
Oh,
I went
wow.
100
Okay.
time. Mhm. And it was one of those definitely like a faith move because, the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, I'm going to quit my salary job and be a full time wedding photographer when the world is falling apart and we don't even know if weddings are going to happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but God was like, no, 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 you're pulling the plug, you're making the move. And that was honestly the busiest year that I've had. I mean, I shot 40 weddings, not including elopements. I shot at least 12 elopements that year too. Um, it was bananas. It was off the chain. I mean, the world was shutting down and I was busier than I've ever been. Um,
Wow.
yeah, it was totally bizarre. But I started like in 2016. And when I started, it was really, it's not a very romantic story because I was working in the hospital as a tech, and I was going to school to be a teacher.
Uh-huh.
And so I initially thought I was going to go to nursing school. I went into nursing school, dropped out of nursing school, a very expensive path of figuring out what the heck I want to do later. I ended up as a teacher. But so I was working in the hospital as a tech at the time in 2016, and my friend, who was a respiratory therapist, walks up to me one day and he's like, "Hey, um, have you ever thought about doing photography?" And I was like, "Not really." And he's like, "Oh, well, why don't you try it? Why don't I take you out for a session one day, and you can see, I'll show you how to use the camera, and see if you like it." And I was like, "Okay, cool." So I took my friend at the time, who is actually like a family member, but it's kind of a complicated story. But I took her out, and she's a gorgeous girl, so pretty, so bubbly, so like happy in front of the camera. So it was a perfect situation. And I was like, once after the session, I remember thinking, how do people get paid to do this? Like, this can't be real. Like, people get paid money to do this. Money is supposed to be hard. It's supposed to be really hard to make money, right? Like, you're supposed to like sweat and turn people and give bed baths and
Be tired.
you're supposed to be tired and your back's supposed to hurt and your feet. I mean, hey, if you're a wedding photographer, your back and your feet do hurt. But it was one of those moments where I was like, yeah, of course, yeah, I'm definitely going to do this. But I never imagined that it would actually take over my life. Like, I had limiting beliefs behind money, behind, my gifts and talents, and even like, who am I to do that kind of thing, imposter syndrome, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely had to work through a lot of that, which is a lot of people's problem. And honestly, all of that mental stuff will keep you from fulfilling your purpose and and keep you from making a gift a career, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, that'll hold you back real quick. But it was my first wedding that I shot in 2017 where I was like, oh yeah, yeah. It was like the beginning of 2017, or it was the beginning of 2016. I can't remember which year. Um, and as soon as when I was shooting the wedding, it was second shooting, I was like, yeah, this is it. This is what I'm meant to do. I'm supposed to be a wedding photographer. That's it. No doubt at all whatsoever. And I just love those moments of clarity where you absolutely know you're in the right space.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't ignore that. And a lot of people will those limiting beliefs and those, all of the mental baggage that life can give you kind of can hold you down from really leaning into that.
Mm-hmm.
But I leaned into it full force. I was like, oh yeah, this is it. But I still kept my teaching job as my photography career expanded. But once it got to the point where there was no way that I could physically be working 8 days a week, then I was like, well, I have to quit my teaching job. There's no way that I can keep this sustained. Yeah, it was just one thing, like really the hospital kind of leveraged me because I had that network of people.
Uh-huh.
And then my friend who taught me how to use a camera, he referred me everybody that asked him for photography. He was just referring.
Wow.
And so, yeah. And so when I moved out to Utah, that's when, because I lived in Georgia for my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
But when I moved to Utah last year, I've been referring business out to, a select few girls and men. I had both really who were on my associate team. And I'm like, hey, send them there, like you guys are going to take care of these people. Like, I know you are.
Yes.
And so it's been a really awesome gift for me to be able to like send that forward because it's happened to me in my life. And I was so thankful for all of the business that he gave me. And so, yeah, just continuing the love. But yeah, so now here we are. In 2020, I said that I wanted to niche down into elopements.
Okay.
I said that, but I was too scared. And I also was living in Georgia, and I'm like, hey, well, there's not a lot of elopements that happening here. And I'm not really wanting to travel all over the place because, I want to start a family. But then once I moved out to Utah, it was like, oh yeah, we're on. Like, this is it. And that's why I wanted to create something different in the photography space where I'm not only like photographing people's day, but I'm really helping them create an experience, not just like, oh, let me just show up and shoot and we'll get the photos and call it a day.
Yeah.
So birthed the elevated elopement experience along with my son.
You did all the things all at one time.
Yes, I sure did. It was quite an adventure, but the the outcome is going to be really fantastic, and I'm just getting started, like the tip of the iceberg with photography. So I'm really looking forward to helping couples not just document and get pretty portraits, but to really capture who they are. And I feel like it's a buzzword in the photography community, like documenting love stories, right? Like
Uh-huh.
documenting your memories. Like everybody says that. What does that actually mean, though? You know,
Yeah.
like what does it mean to capture someone's love story? And to me, it means that I become a fly on the wall in a lot of the moments during the moments. Like I'm not intervening and I'm just letting things happen and catching the candids as they come, because there's going to be moments of when he looks at you or when you look at him, and it's just that sincere emotion that you can see on their face,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
and that to me is what it's all about. It's really connecting with couples in a way that helps them feel comfortable and makes them feel like they can be themselves and that they're beautiful. Because I know from experience, being in front of the camera can be a very awkward situation. And if you're feeling awkward, you're more than likely not going to have, like, you're not going to be able to just be in the moment,
Right. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So a lot of it is that for me. And I think this goes into your next question, doesn't it?
Well, I was going to say, when I was like looking through some of your stuff, and this quote may have been from a while back, so you can elaborate on it. But you had said
Okay.
that like your goal was to capture like the emotions and dive deeper than just a pretty photo. And I know from personal experience, you do that so well. Like I can look back at our vow renewal album and I just feel it all over again. And I know that I lived it. So like, that's there. But I just think you really do capture the emotion behind it. And I just think that's really
Mm.
special and super unique. Like there's a lot of pretty pictures, but I just think it's really incredible when you can feel the picture.
Yes. Yes, exactly. You're going to make me cry, Amy. Gosh. I mean, the fact that you can say that, that means that I'm doing something right, because it's not about what I think or how I feel like I do something. It's how I know that I'm getting it right is through my clients and through my couples. That's it.
Yeah.
If they say something different than I'm thinking, then I'm wrong, you know? And I will never have pride to where I can't see that. And the feedback that you have given me has been so encouraging, honestly.
Well, I think you really do create like an experience. I don't think, like looking back at our vow renewal day, I really don't think that there was a moment that I was like stressed or worried about like, am I going to get a pretty picture or am I going to get the pose that I wanted? It was literally like anything that I had looked at ahead of time, like just kind of like completely disappeared from my mind. And I was like in the moment. And it was just like, this is my day. And like, I don't have to compare it to
Um,
anyone else's day or anyone else's picture. And I just think like you made us so comfortable that I was able just to let go of any expectations that I had going into that and just really get to enjoy the moment and also get to enjoy the album afterwards without the expectation of
um,
like, well, did I get this exact
Yeah.
Pinterest pose or whatever. It was like, no, that was my
Yeah.
day. And to feel the emotion when I look back at those pictures, like having that emotion with the picture
Yeah.
would never compare to like, oh, well, I got this pose, but it didn't
Yeah.
mean anything. And so I think you
Right.
capture that so well. And then you also said at some point, and I think this is back when you were in Georgia, you said, Hannah Rita, photography is my business, but people are my passion. And I just think, like, even in
Oh,
the
you went
conversation
down
before
memory
this,
lane,
yes,
honey.
I did.
Oh,
But I just think you are still so true to that. And like, it comes out in the way that you interact with your clients. It comes out in, I just think that you do such a good, like, quality, like, there was no hesitation when I came to you and said, hey, I want you to do our vow renewal photography. Like, I knew that you were going to deliver on it. And I just think that says a lot about you, the way that you connect with your clients and the way that you show up for them. And it goes so far beyond just a picture and just showing up to take a picture. And I just think you're
thank you.
incredible. You do such a good
You're
job.
incredible. Oh, I can't. I'm just like, I'm so thankful that I'm getting something right, like,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm a very harsh critic on myself, very harsh on myself. I feel like I'm definitely my toughest critic.
Yeah.
And, I'm always trying to find ways to improve. And I look back and I'm always thinking, okay, well, where could I have, you know, done a better job or, serve them better? And the fact that you're telling me that you were able to be in the moment and that everything went off without a hitch for your elopement day, that's amazing because internally, uh, that morning of your of your vow renewal, I was like, "Oh my gosh, we are late. We are late." But I did not want to say anything to you because I did not want you to think in your mind, "Oh, gosh, we're running late." You knew that we were running late. You knew.
I knew, but I trusted you. I was like, Hannah's
Yes,
got this. And I was
yes,
able to let
and
that
I had
go.
no. Exactly. So if I were to have made a conversation about it, like, because you rode in the car with me on the way to the ceremony spot, so we could have had a whole conversation about how we are running late. But I was like, absolutely not. We are on time because we are here and we are on time. Um, so with your hair and makeup went a little bit longer because usually it does.
Yes.
Okay, hair and makeup always taking longer. And so but the lighting was perfect. Everything was perfect. And so, yeah, thank goodness that we didn't have to even make that a conversation or make that a thought. And that's a part of the experience is the people having your people skills, okay? Being able to read the room, being able to read body language, being able to know when to talk and when to stop. And those are the things that I can't teach people because as I've been coaching other photographers, other people, I've noticed that, some people thrive and some people shut down. And I think it
Mm-hmm.
has a lot to do with their confidence in connecting with other people.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you can't connect and you can't read the room, read body language and understand what people need in that moment, then you're going to have a hard time growing your business.
Yeah. And you do such a good job at that, though.
Thank
You are
you.
incredible. Okay.
I just don't even know what to say, Amy. My goodness.
Well, you are awesome. All right. Take me behind the scenes real quick. So, say I book you, I pick my date, I pick my dream location. How do you make all the magic happen?
Well,
Don't
and you
tell
know
me
what?
all
A
of your
lot of people,
secrets, but tell me, how do you
no,
make it all
I'll
happen?
tell you all the secrets. I don't care. I will tell you everything. So, really, I think where the magic happens is me getting to know couples. And a lot of how I get to know people is not necessarily, it's definitely through the in-person meeting over Zoom usually, talking on the phone, but I love to get that personal interaction
Mhm.
because the more you get to know me, the more comfortable that you're going to be on the elopement day.
Mhm.
And so I make sure to do a couple of meetings beforehand so that we are on the same page and that that I'm, working on your details behind the scenes and that you don't have to worry about, okay, well, what time am I going to need hair and makeup done? Or what, how far away is the lodging from the ceremony spot? And what does my timeline even look like? Because a lot of people get overwhelmed because it's a blank slate. You are creating something from nothing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of a big deal. And it's a little bit, it can be very overwhelming and very like, just okay, well, what are we even going to do? So I like to give people inspiration based on what they tell me they like to do. Like, are you a foodie? Are you a hiking kind of person? Do you like to climb? Do you like to go off-roading? Like, do you not want to do any of that? Do you just want amazing photos and you want an amazing experience with a charcuterie board and a nice hotel and a spa? Because that's kind of my kind of couple, right? Like I'm I'm not really the outdoorsy kind of person, like especially people that live around here in Moab. I don't fit in with those people, okay? I am more of the person who likes the bougier experiences,
Mm-hmm.
good food,
I feel you.
amazing photos. Yeah, maybe a little hike, a little bit, go just a little walk, if you will.
Yes.
Um, it's about getting to know them though, because if they want to go on a 7 mile hike, I'm down. You know, I'm down for whatever, but it's about really getting to know them and creating an experience from that rather than putting them in a box. Because I think that even as an elopement photographer and planner, you can easily put people in a box and be like, okay, here's the template, copy and paste. Here's what you're going to do. This
Mm-hmm.
is a good idea. This is good for lighting, blah, blah, blah. But for me, I'm like, hey, I'll tell you what the best lighting is, but how do you want to incorporate, your family and friends that you are going to have on your elopement day? Because that also matters. And so you have to think about like the big picture. And I think really after someone books me, I want to get to know them. So I start with a planning document. It's usually a Google Doc and it has everything on it, as you know.
Yes.
And I just keep everything there because emails can get a little fuzzy, they're all over the place unless you organize them really nicely, which some people do, some people don't. I like to just keep it organized on a Google Doc and be like, okay, any changes that are made are here. I do a lot of sourcing. So when I say sourcing, I go and I dig into the internet. Like I go into the interwebs to figure out what is the best spot, where are the best locations. And it's really taking that load off of the couple and giving it to me and being like, okay, let me help you. Let us you worry about just all of the fun stuff. Like what color you want your bridal bouquet to be. Don't worry about where you're going to stay or what day is it going to be or even the flights. Like I have created resources to help couples with finding the best pricing on flights and things like that. So it's kind of like a travel guidance person. I'm not a travel agent. I've thought about it, but I'm not a travel agent. I'm just piecing everything together. So all you have to do is just book it and you're done.
And I can attest
And
that you do that. You really do that.
oh, yes, I actually do. And so, the sourcing for me is fun. I love the planning part because it just kind of like I can start seeing everything come together. And, when it comes to parties and stuff, I've always been a huge like, and weddings too. I've helped many weddings, plan the larger weddings, micro weddings, elopements. And it's just my thing. I love it.
You do so well. I remember just being able to tell you, like, this is what I want. I have no idea how to do this. I've never been to Yosemite before. I don't even know.
Yeah.
I don't even really know what I'm doing. And you literally pulled it all together and you were like, here's your timeline. Here's where to show up. And I was like, perfect.
Yes, yes. And honestly, it was just such a beautiful, like the way the day flowed was so amazing. And having insider intel, people who had been in the park and who was like a professional in the park. I connected with another photographer who had been there because I had never been there before either,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And so that's where the sourcing comes into play. That's where like digging in and figuring out, okay, well, we know that this location is good. And you have to think about road closures and you have to think about time and traffic. You have to think about the time of year, the weather. All of those things play a factor in it. So honestly, elopements, when photographers, when I look at their website and they say, oh, weddings packages start at $4,000 or $5,000. Elopements start at 2. That's how I know that they haven't shot that many elopements.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, okay, you do significantly more work, quote unquote, when you're an elopement photographer, because you are creating the experience. You are creating the thing. As a wedding photographer, you just show up and you just document, because everything, the venue's there, the planner's there, the coordinator's there, everything is orchestrated, right? But
Yeah.
as an elopement photographer, you have to think about the orchestration. And so some elopement photographers are basically just doing like 3-hour photo sessions. That's what they're doing. It's not an experience. It's let's get some cool photos and get you married. Which if that's all you want, then that's fine. But it's a really important day.
Yes. And some of us like to be a little extra.
A little extra. I like the little extra. Amazing.
Going off of that, Hannah, tell me what motivates you to continue in this industry. Obviously, there's like 1,000 photographers out there, but like what motivates you to keep going and to, like you mentioned before, like keep getting better, keep kind of like elevating the experience that you provide?
I think that what motivates me is knowing I haven't reached that quote unquote peak. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel like the best is yet to come. And the more I refine the experience of the process, the pre-planning process, the day of, I have a vision of what it looks like. And it's a pretty luxury elopement experience that I want to provide. And that vision keeps me motivated, because I always have a vision. There's always a purpose behind everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for my future, 20 years from now, yeah, I could totally see myself still shooting elopements, Will I be doing other things too? Probably, because that's just who I am. But yeah, honestly, it's that vision that I have that.
Hey,
It's that free Zoom membership, honey.
it just totally cut me off. Can you tell this is my first time with Zoom? Okay, we're back. In the same line of thought as there being like a bajillion photographers out there to choose from, how do you stay focused or like stay true to your art? Like, yeah, I feel like as a photographer, you hopefully understand where I'm going with that question of like,
yeah, for sure.
Your kind of brand, your thing. How do you stay true to that? And I think that comes back to like that imposter syndrome and like that enoughness thing that we were talking about at the very beginning. But tell me your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So I think that this is a really important conversation for every photographer to really have and think about. Is you have to be really confident in your brand and know your brand so well that you know that there are people out there looking for you, and you're doing a disservice to them if you aren't conveying your value. That's like the huge overarching thing. That I think is really important. But when I think about my art and like how I edit and how I shoot and all of these things, I'm definitely always looking for ways to be inspired. And there are photographers who really inspire me. But it's that if I look at a photographer and I feel like, ooh, they're so much better than me, then okay, cut the show. Don't do that. Walk away, unfollow, whatever you got to do. For me, I think that I will always be a timeless photographer, meaning I'm not going to do the trendy stuff like the blur. Like there's this thing with the blur. I'm not into it. I don't like it. I don't think that people, the people that are attracted to my work are going to want that. because I want you to look at your album in 20 years and not see my edits. I don't want to distract from you. I don't want to distract from your emotion. Like, I don't want you to even think about your skin tones when you look back in 20 years. Like, I want you to be like, that's how I looked. Right. So that's how I stand out, though, is because it is really all the trends that everyone gets sucked into, like, the really dark and moody and the filmy vibe that's going on right now. And I think shooting film and having a filmy edit, two different things, right?
Yeah.
I love the look of film. I love the nostalgia behind it. And I'm actually getting into it this year.
Oh,
It's one of my
fun.
big goals for the year is getting into film. Yes. And I'm so excited about that. But I'm always going to still have, my digital. Like I'm never going to not have that, but film is going to just help me get creative. But yeah, does that answer the question pretty good?
I
Because I
think
could go
so.
on and on.
Yeah, I really think so. I love that.
Okay, good.
All right. To wrap things up, Hannah, tell
Yes.
us what are the top 2 or 3 things that you would encourage a bride to prioritize on her wedding day, whether that's an elopement or like a traditional wedding. What 2 or 3 things would you say are at the top of your list?
I think it is the huge thing that I want every couple to do before they start planning, before they start booking stuff and making Pinterest boards and doing all those things. I call it the dream it up step. Okay. You got to dream it up. You need to meditate on this. You need to go to a quiet space. You need to, like, whether that be, getting in the bath and just chilling out for a while and thinking about your day. Like, close your eyes. What do you see? Who do you see? What does it look like? What's around you? All of these things are really important for you to ask yourself before you start booking and putting deposits down. Because once you start doing that, then you're going on a whole train that you might not even want to go down. So
Such a
that's
good
number one.
point.
That's number one. And I think that we should do that when it comes to our lives, when it comes to our business, when it comes to our marriage, when it comes to our kids. Like, what do we see as the goal, right? What's the end goal? Because if you just start planning aimlessly, then you might end up with a whole big old wedding that you didn't really want in the first place.
Yeah.
So that's number one. And then number two is really, you need to have good relationships with your parents and your in-laws enough to where you don't feel the need to do something just because they want you to do it, And I say that with love. I know that if Rosemary were to come to me and be like, "Hey, mom," in 20 something years when she gets married, if she were to come to me and not like, and she went off and eloped and didn't tell me, that would break my heart. Yeah, it would. I mean, so you have to think about, like, you can still elope and consider the people that you love the most. There
Yes.
is a way to do that. Like, you don't have to hide. It's not a running off and doing something thing. You can include them in ways that may not even be having them physically present. They could write you letters. They could send you a video that you could watch together. Like, there's all kinds of different things that you could do to incorporate the people that you love without having to have this giant party. So I just think that the people pleasing thing, you're not going to please everyone. It's never going to happen, especially if you want to have kids. Once you start having kids, oh my gosh, like,
Agreed.
you're not. And I think setting those boundaries with family is so important. And you might as well exercise that muscle when you're wedding planning. Like, exercise that muscle now because you're going to need it later on, especially when you get married and you're in a relationship. You being married and having kids it's so necessary for you to have those healthy boundaries with everybody.
I
So
could
I
not
think
agree more.
those are the two, like, top things that I think are just really important when you're wedding planning, for sure.
I think those are so good and kind of out of the box of what most people might think. But I think at the core, those two are so good and so foundational into setting the tone
Yes.
for everything else. everything else.
Because it's all about relationships.
Yes.
Just like me, my business, all about relationships. It's all like, that's the first thing that I think of. It's just like, okay, what do you really want? And how can we not only set those boundaries, but having clear communication with those really important people is laying the foundation, like you said, for a long lasting relationship. Because people pleasing will not lead you to a long lasting relationship. It will lead you to resentment, bitterness, passive aggression. No one wants that.
Preach, girl. Preach.
Yes.
We could hang out here for a long time, but
we could.
We're going to wrap it up. Tell our listeners where they can find you, where they can follow along and learn more about you.
Yes. So if you want to be a photographer, you can go to Miss MRS Hannah Rita. That is my Instagram handle. So yeah, Miss Hannah Rita. And then you can follow me on Instagram also at Elevated Elopement Experience. It is elevated, elopement, experience. Kind of wordy, but you'll find me there.
And we'll include those in the show notes.
Yes, please. Thank you so much, Amy.
Thank you, Hannah, for being here. Super grateful and loved our conversation.
I love you, Amy Grace.
Love you.